all see you. They can all see me. I think we're good to go. Check, double check.
All right, you're back.
We are back.
Back from trips and other stuff and a lot of work and
lots of trips, lots of work. We didn't have
lots of juggling.
Didn't have quite enough of a buffer to keep folks occupied until this episode. But what's up, everybody? Corey Singletary with the Citizens Utility Board with another episode of CUB Tracks, alongside our fearless leader,
Tom Content. Citizens Utility Board back again. Welcome.
I try to keep you on your toes.
That's right. Somebody has to.
Yeah, it's not formally part of the job description, but I do what I can. But today, first thing, most important, right off the top, we wanted to make certain folks were aware of 2 listening sessions being held by the Public Service Commission related to low-income programs. These public input sessions is what they're calling them. Are aimed at bringing together interested parties and attendees to share firsthand perspectives that may be beneficial or helpful in developing low-income assistance programs. And so they're being held for We Energies and Wisconsin Public Service Corporation. And those listening sessions are on Monday, June 12th and Wednesday, June 14th. June 12th, it may have already happened by the time this comes out, so hopefully we can get this out. But Monday, June 12th, at the Brown County Library, there will be 2 listening sessions, one from noon to 2 p.m. and one from 5:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. So if you are interested in that, please make certain to attend and share your stories and your perspectives. And then the second listening session is going to be Wednesday, June 14th in Milwaukee in 2 different locations. So there'll be one public input session from noon to 2, and that'll be at the Milwaukee Public Library Washington Park branch in the Finney Community Room. So noon to 2 at the Milwaukee Public Library, Washington Park branch. And then from 5:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. at Neighborhood House on Richardson Place, 2819 West Richardson Place. So some information there. We'll have some information. I believe you put a blog post together.
Yep, there's links to all the information on the cubwi.org/blog on our blog, on our website, with links for people who want to register to attend and details on, just this, what you just gave on the times and place for each of the all 4 of them. So.
Yeah, you get the times and the places and the agenda. The commission put out an agenda for those, so folks
have links to their agenda from the PSC, so it's all there right on the CUB website for people to check out.
And it's good that you mentioned that the commission is looking for folks to register. I don't believe it is strictly required, but I think they want to get a feel for how many people are going to be attending to make certain that they allot enough time for folks to give their stories.
And the other reason they put a registration link on there is because there will be a Zoom. They're inviting people to attend by Zoom. So for people in far northern Wisconsin for the WPS utility, or people in rural Wisconsin for We Energy's natural gas customers who are struggling with their bills or insights on low income issues, could attend remotely. So.
Yeah. That's another good note, that there is a virtual option for folks who need to attend that way. So June 12th, June 14th, public input sessions in Green Bay and Milwaukee. Go to cubwi.org/blog. We have information there on all that good stuff. Maybe keeping with the WEC Energy Group theme, I believe while I was on vacation, the commission issued notices or reopened the 2 rate cases from last year for We Energies and Wisconsin Public Service, and because those 2 utilities have come in and asked for additional rate increases for 2024. I think you have some info on that.
Yes, I do. So that's right. They filed reopener cases. So that's essentially, the big case was last year, but they did get approval from the commission to file reopener for certain categories of items. And so in the case of We Energies, that ends up being $86 million on the electric side, which is about a 2.5% increase is the proposal. And that's kind of split almost evenly between new projects, so new solar and other natural gas. I think the the Weston plant too.
The Western Race gas plants.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So not just solar. So new projects plus higher costs tied to the Point Beach power purchase agreement on the fuel side. So that would be 2.5% or $86 million for We Energies. On the electric side, they're also seeking increases of on the natural gas bills for the local natural gas distribution bills for the new LNG facilities that they have got approval to build. And so that would be a 4.5% increase for Wisconsin Electric gas operations customers and 2.9% increase for Wisconsin Gas. And so that between those three elements, that's the We Energies proposal. And then moving on to WPS, so the Green Bay utility. This is kind of interesting because they have new projects, higher costs tied to new projects as well, which is about $9 million. But the overall impact, based on the way they're forecasting their fuel costs for 2024, is a decrease. So they are expecting that $9 million of increase, but that's going to be offset by about $36 million in lower fuel costs. So they're coming in for approval to decrease by about 2.3% or $28 million. That's not something we see every year.
It's not often that we see that every year.
I mean, when's the last time? But I think they're coming in for that reopener because they are adding the new projects as part of that reopener, and so then they had to update their fuel cost plan as part of that. And it looks like they're starting to see some of the fuel savings that we're hoping a lot of utilities end up seeing during the clean energy transition.
I mean, that's been the promise, right?
Right.
Is that we'll see lower fuel costs.
Steel for fuel.
Yep, and so it's great. I mean, there's a little bit of cross your fingers and cross your toes and hope for the best because there's an upward push on rates, there's an upward pressure from all that new plant that you're talking about going in for pub service, but it's being offset enough by at least their projection of lower fuel costs for 2024 that it becomes a decrease. So we kind of have to hope that those lower fuel costs actually materialize.
Well, and that's the caveat. We put the caveat in our blog too, just because natural gas prices on the spot market have come way down from where they were in November. And so looking forward, they may be projecting X, but by the time this gets decided in November, it's a chance that if natural gas prices surge again, then there may not be as a decrease or as much of a decrease. So we just don't know.
So there's that, and also depending on what actually happens in 2024. So there's a lot of, I think there's a lot of hope for the best, plan for the worst, but for the moment, at least you're right, a decrease is not something we see very often, so we'll hope that holds up over time. And then a couple of little updates for folks. One is just to mention that CUB will be at the Midwest Renewable Energy Association Energy Fair in Custer, Wisconsin. We've been going there for a number of years now. We usually have a table where we can get out in the community and meet folks, and the Energy Fair is a great one because it brings together a lot of folks from around the state who naturally have an interest in energy issues. So we have a lot of great conversations with folks, but that's going to be June 23rd and 25th. And we'll also have
that whole solstice weekend, 23rd through the 25th.
Yeah, so Friday through Sunday.
Yeah.
And we will be CUB will also have a couple of sessions over the course of the weekend, one Friday and one Sunday, if that's the kind of thing that you're interested in. And then the last one, I don't know if you wanted to talk a little bit about it. We have something new that we just dropped this year. We released an impact report.
Yes, we did.
Over, I think, about a couple of weeks ago. And so this is, we'll still have our usual annual report and sort of the typical newsletters that we do, but this was something additional we added to the calendar. I don't know if you wanted to talk about that.
Yeah, no, so basically we call it our stakeholder engagement and impact report. But so often CUB has been communicating to our members and to the public about dollars and cents. And that's primary focus is, hey, what did we do in the rate cases and what did we save? And for those keeping score, it was about $40 million last year, which is something we're still going to talk about. But when we thought about how to demonstrate what we do, we're doing so many things. And so what the impact report does, and we'll have a link on the blog for that as well, to show what we're doing in the area of policy development, collaboration with other organizations, collaboration on the national stage with the Critical Consumers Issues Forum that you're involved with, or the National Consumer Advocates Group that we're all a part of, and then adding on to that, kind of the exposure that we're getting. We're able to quantify that we had over 100 media hits last year, which was, first time we'd seen that kind of attention. And then some really cool things that just happened, that Kara, our general counsel, and Steve both launched mentoring programs. And so just how we're trying to build kind of a new generation of consumer advocates. So Kara launched an externship program with UW Law School. And our first extern actually went on to work, is now been hired after getting her law degree to work for a firm in D.C. that's actually working on cases at the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. So that's just some of the sampling of things beyond dollars and cents that we wanted to showcase in this new report. And so it's been mailed out to folks, but we're going to have an online version. We have an online version available on our website that is linked from our blog.
Yep. You can just go to the website, and we have a resources page where you can find that impact report along with all of the other fun kind of reports and things that we publish and produce, including our very exciting audit.
Audited financial statements,
and
all that good stuff. It's
super exciting.
Yeah, we got some cures from insomnia. We got all sorts of stuff. So.
But I guess along those lines, you'd mentioned that the impact report discusses some of the work we've been doing in the office or around the office in terms of collaboration. Working with other stakeholders, trying to, build not only relationships with folks that, they can help us with our work and we can help them, but also sort of knowledge sharing and bridge building to tackle some tricky issues. And one policy issue in the utility space that has been of particular interest over the last year. We've just mentioned the listening sessions, the public input sessions related to low-income programs in Milwaukee and Green Bay. And really the issue of equity in the utility space has become really a central focus, not just in Wisconsin, but nationally. And we were invited, our office was invited to attend a roundtable that was put on by the National Association of State State Utility Consumer.
NASIO?
It was NASIO, National Association of State Energy Officials, NARUC, National Association of Regulated Utility Commissioners, and the National Governors Association convened a Midwest Regional Equity Roundtable on June 6th through 7th in Minneapolis. And the topic was equity considerations in electricity planning and policy. And I was able to attend, made the drive up to Minneapolis, and thanks to NARUC for, being able to provide some travel support for the consumer advocate offices that were able to attend. There was actually a really good turnout from the Midwest consumer advocate offices. But we spent, about a day and a half, talking about equity in the utility space and, the type of work that folks have been doing and the type of work that kind of needs to be done, and really both doing some, knowledge-based building as well as, kind of workshopping and working through some hard questions around equity. And, the first one right off the top is, Tom, how would you define equity?
Oh my gosh. I think when I think about what we're working on, it's all about, affordability, fairness, and balance, and equity really comes into that fairness. It's one thing for the average rate to be affordable, but is what's affordable to some is not affordable to others, and I think that's where we just don't pay attention enough as the utility industry as a whole. I think we haven't been paying enough attention to the what challenges people are bringing to trying to make ends meet every month, and trying to afford their bills, and some of those are existing challenges where they're suddenly in crisis, but some of those are longstanding challenges that are linked to, marginalization and a variety of systemic issues that we've got that people are facing. So.
Yeah, I didn't mean to put you in the hot seat. If it makes you
It's
feel
the hot
any,
seat.
if it makes you feel any better,
That's what CUB Tracks is. Sometimes it's the hot seat.
it is. When we went around the room in Minneapolis, the number of organizations that did not have a formal definition for equity it was I would say a vast majority of the organizations, the agencies, state agencies that were there, and so it's not a unique problem. I think a lot of people up to this point have treated equity as kind of like, well, I know it's like qualitative. I know it when I see it. As an example, though, Quinn Parker, who was a diversity, equity, and inclusion trainer, who came in and presented at the roundtable. This is just as by way of example. This is her definition of equity. It's equity for her. She says equity means approaching interactions with objectivity and a willingness to view all people as equal and deserving of just, impartial, and objective treatment. With the goal to improve decision-making by removing personal biases. And that's right on her website for Color Consulting. But that was right off the top. We all convened to talk about equity. And then the first question is, how do we define it?
How do you define it? Yeah, exactly. And our national consumer advocates has an equity resolution last year. And I think they used a definition that was actually, looks like it was taken from the feds. So the they said, well, we don't have to define it ourselves because it's already been defined, right? Mm-hmm. So fair and just treatment of all ratepayers and advancement of an energy system where economic, health, and social benefits extend to all levels of society, regardless of ability, race, or socioeconomic status. So.
Yeah, that's. It's a kind of a really foundational first order question for anyone who's looking to tackle work in this space. Is I think we all agree that fairness is really part of it. But what's going to be sort of your guidepost as you go through the work? And I thought it would be fun, and I can talk a little bit about some of the stuff that I can't actually talk in a lot of detail about what was discussed at the meeting because it was conducted under what's called Chatham House rules, which means, well, we bring back what we learn. We don't attribute things to anyone in particular. But
it's a good topic for the day.
It is good. But so a couple of things. So let's try this. So I'm going to throw these 4 questions out to you because both myself and the chair of our commission attended, and we both had an opportunity to go around the room and answer these questions from our perspectives. And I'm kind of curious as to what your answer is. So what state or federal policy drivers guide your agency, CUB's equity strategy? I
think when you think about so much has been happening in the federal space and state space in terms of the ability of the state under Chair Vox's leadership to actually make this more of an issue. She's driving more data collection, which was something that CUB was already asking for before she even became chair. And on the federal side, you're seeing so much federal money that through the Justice 40 initiative that's going to be targeted to this. So I think we have to try to maximize federal dollars as a state because the more we can maximize federal dollars in these areas, then utility overall ratepayer dollars aren't being asked to do as much to shoulder as much. But I think those are some of the drivers. It's the federal funding, the Justice 40 aspect of the federal funding, which is through an executive order where 40% of dollars are supposed to be allocated toward either these different terms, but disadvantaged communities or LMI, depending on the provision. So I think those are big drivers, and there's huge federal dollars that are coming across the country to Wisconsin through various pieces of legislation that's linked to that, and that whether that's the infrastructure, the bipartisan infrastructure law, or the Inflation Reduction Act. So.
Yeah, that's actually a really interesting answer because I can share my own thoughts that I shared there. Is my answer was there isn't any.
And I mean, in terms of, I see I see where you're going.
And well, but to your point about there are potentially opportunities that occasionally trickle down from the state level or the federal level in terms of policy. Often, like you're talking about, in terms of resources, dollar resources that can be leveraged,
right?
Whether it's directly to benefit customers or to build programs, infrastructure, soft infrastructure systems to help customers. But it was the sense that, like, really, if we look at Wisconsin state law, certainly the governor has put out executive orders sort of prioritizing these things at that level. But in terms of like state statute, we don't really have anything to fall back on.
That's true. And the governor has included, equity officers for different state agencies in the budget, and those have not been adopted. So.
Mm-hmm. So it's challenging in that a theme in terms of when I kind of spoke from the Wisconsin perspective, the challenge that we have is that we don't have a legislative mandate. We don't really have clear policy as it relates to equity, and so we have to kind of find our way without that. So the next question is how have you how have you engaged with stakeholders in your work related to equity?
So I think what we're trying to when I talk to stakeholders and other groups, it's trying to inform them of what we're doing, what we've been working on in the area of trying to get better data on energy burden, and also talk to community groups or others about the collaborations we're doing with the utilities in the areas of trying to bring innovative ideas to help people who are struggling on their bills to pay their bills to Wisconsin. Ideas that are already in place in other states, and how can we bring those here? One of the first things we need to do is maximize the ability to just have greater understanding of these issues, because I just think for too long we've been not focused enough in this area, and just like, well, that's not our problem, but it's kind of becomes everybody's problem in a way.
It does, and I mean, there's an economic argument, but there's also just sort of, as we were talking about, just going back to how you think of equity, really comes down to fairness. Is it fair that some people, that their relationship with their utilities, their sort of life-sustaining services, is as economically challenging as it is?
And the thing I was going to add is just we in other states there are dedicated low-income interveners that work at their public utility commissions. So we've gotten to meet some of those, like National Consumer Law Center or the Public Utility Law Project in New York. But in Wisconsin, we don't have that, and it wasn't until last year with Walnut Way getting involved in two rate cases was that the first time we'd actually seen that, and so that was a chance for us to have more dialogue with community groups starting last year and then continuing this year.
So I wanted to circle back to two things you mentioned. The first one was data, really understanding the problem. And that was actually a really big theme in Minneapolis. We talked a lot about data collection, data transparency, both in terms of just, collecting information about our utility systems and the utility customers that we haven't historically looked at.
Right.
Things like, even just if you think about it, just even from an operational standpoint, right? Really detailed locational reliability information. Can we look at that and make certain that all customers are receiving the same quality of service across the utility service territory? Things like data that's available through tools like the climate and economic justice screening tool, which goes all the way down to I believe the census tract, maybe census block, but I know census tract, and it looks at not only sort of utility affordability issues, the cost of utility service compared to household income, but a wide array of equity and economic justice indicators related, everything from exposure to pollution, transportation cost, health, education. And I think that beyond getting into more granular data, locational reliability data, customer service quality data, more information about the level of low-income program participation, I think merging that at a really granular level, to with these sort of economic justice, demographic indicators, and really looking at it, bringing that problem before the commission and saying, look, it's not just for these people, it's not just the fact that their bill, that 10% of their household income goes to the utilities. They're also facing all of these other economic challenges that cause them to be severely disadvantaged. And again, equity and fairness, it sort of really makes it clear that something needs to be done.
Right.
And so there was a lot of discussion about data and the different types of data that different states have been looking at.
I got one quick thing on data.
Yeah.
So because I had to speak, I think it might have been while you were in Spain. I had spoke at a webinar on just transition for hosted by basically activist shareholders who challenge utility companies to make sure they're doing everything in the area of governance and other issues. And they're looking at the just transition. And I talked about 2 data sources, and so we should probably add all these data sources to the show notes. But one was the resolution that our Consumer Advocates group passed last fall, which had a big long list of metrics that NSUCA, the Consumer Advocates, said every utility and every commission around the country should be tracking all these categories of things, some of the things you just mentioned. And then the other one is a report that also came out late last year. It's called Energy Equity Project, and it's got 148 different proposed energy equity measures in there. So there are a lot of interesting there's a lot of talk about this issue, and I think once we move from talking to actual and to getting good metrics, I think everything can advance further from measuring to actually managing this stuff. So
yeah, that Energy Equity Project report and the 148 metrics that are included therein was actually mentioned at the roundtable, and it was basically expressed. It's like not all of them are going to apply to you, but there's probably at least one in there that applies to your work.
Exactly.
So yeah, data is a big one, but then also just the other big theme, which shouldn't be a surprise, is how to engage community organizations in this space. I don't think it's realistic, and I think everyone in the room agreed that it was probably not realistic that we're going to turn all these community organizations into interveners before the utility regulator. But at least being able to engage with those organizations so that there can be sharing of sort of their perspective, their stories, so that can help inform the policymaking process, and that's something you'd mentioned Walnut Way. So we're starting to see a little bit of that just organically, an interest from those groups to participate in the process. But there's a lot of barriers to entry for those folks to come in.
Right, exactly. I mean, I think I was talking with Antonio about how he got involved in this, and he'd been at a meeting of African American community group leaders from around the country that were working on sustainability and trying to improve their neighborhoods. And somebody from a state down south said, "You've got to start intervening in rate cases." He said, "What's a rate case?" And lo and behold, they were in the rate case, and now they have a seat at the table.
And so it's some of it's just knowledge, awareness.
Right.
They're a sort of, I guess, dark joke, because it's true and unfortunate, is that that utility commissions are the most important organization to people's lives that they've never heard of.
That people haven't heard of, right?
Yeah. And so it's just awareness, and also just, these sort of frontline community organizations that they're doing important work right now, helping their communities and their constituents, get through the day. And they're doing an important work there, and trying to find ways to support their engagement on energy issues
Right.
is really important. Do state agencies, do commissions need to think about ways to fund compensation to when they ask organizations to participate in stakeholder working groups and things of that nature, to acknowledge that resource challenge, and also just fairness to acknowledge the fact that there's value being transferred from those groups to inform the process. And some of it too we've encountered. So this is separate from the meeting I was just at, but we've also encountered that there's just some cynicism about when new organizations show up to the table about like, well, never heard of these people before, and what's their deal, and are they a shadow organization for someone else, and that type of thing.
Well, and we've always done it this way,
Yeah.
so why should we change? And it's like, well, everybody should be looking at their processes and open to change. So, especially when we've got longstanding issues. So, the more voices, the better when it comes to participatory democratic process like this.
So one more, and I think I'll let you off the hook. So this is the third of four sort of, like I said, these were sort of the prompt questions that we started the workshop off with. So how does your agency, how does CUB currently incorporate equity into distribution system planning, energy efficiency programs, or affordability considerations?
Well, the affordability considerations is probably that's where we're just putting household energy burden in a spotlight and trying to use the utilities' own data to help Wisconsin government, utilities, and community groups focus in on where the worst problems are. And you're seeing that. Before 3 years ago, utilities weren't measuring this. Now they are measuring it. Now we have utilities that are of their own heat maps available of where the energy insecurity or energy poverty is happening. And you're seeing innovative ideas come forth and new ideas come forth because once you start measuring something, you want your score to go up, right? You want to do better. So if you can't, the old adage is if you're not managing it, if you're not measuring it, you're not going to be able to manage. If you're not measuring it, you're not going to be able to manage it. So now they want to manage it. And then on the issue of energy efficiency, I think you were you provided our comments, but on the focus on energy docket last year for the new 4-year planning horizon for the focus on energy, there was a agreement to pilot some community-based initiatives for focus, so that we have more happening in the way of energy efficiency. And I think there's going to be a lot of that's not going to be CUB. It's going to be the state through implementing the Inflation Reduction Act is going to be pivotal in trying to figure out how all these things work together.
Yeah, those are things we've kind of been doing now. The one that we haven't really, but I think we have an opportunity coming up this year, and I think it's an additional lens that we should apply is on not just distribution system planning, but system planning in general. Is someone from a different state, we were chatting about how when utilities come in with whether it's grid modernization plans, system hardening, reliability, and resilience projects or anything like that, we should be asking, to be perfectly honest, the commission should be asking this too, but we should be asking for detailed geospatial data. Tell us what are your essentially, what are your estimates of improvements in reliability throughout your service territory? Don't just tell me like on average. Tell me where you're going to put these projects in. Show me on a map and tell me how that's going to affect the reliability in the various communities throughout your service territory. And asking questions like, did you look at your reliability data across your service territory, across the area, and see if there were economically disadvantaged communities that were also suffering from reliability challenges, and really trying to layer all of these considerations in and not just have it be a decision made by a bunch of engineers in a room in the back office of the utility, but bringing it up to the level of policy and looking at things through an equity lens. And I think not only just looking at it objectively, not only do I think that the utilities should be doing that anyway, just in terms of prudent planning, right? If you're not really drilling down to a high level of resolution geographically, spatially within your service territory to really figure out where the problems are. If you're not doing that, to say nothing of equity, if you're not doing that, then you're not doing your job right. But in 2023, you should also be layering in these other considerations when you're making these decisions.
Yeah, that's become a high-profile issue in some states, particularly Michigan with the reliability challenges that they've had. And I know that in some of the rate settlements that have been improved over there for their utilities, I'll just add a sidebar that they have resource planning requirements in those states where they have to actually file detailed plans with the commission that the commission has the power to approve. But now in those states, they're going to have to take a look at evaluate the impacts of how outages disproportionately affected urban and low-income areas, and then provide detailed planning in their upcoming IRP or distribution IRP for how they're going to address that. So it's not an abstract issue. This is real life.
Yeah, and it is kind of an evergreen issue that's slipped under the radar, because even if there isn't this bigger planning process that you've mentioned, even if there isn't an integrated resource plan,
right,
the utilities are always on an annual basis, renewals and replacements. They're putting in new lines, they're taking stuff out, they're replacing equipment, they're investing in new distribution equipment. And I don't think that question ever gets asked. Like what were the criteria that went into the utility deciding that these were the places that needed investment this year?
Right.
And what were your metrics for making that determination? So that's it. That you mentioned that affordability and energy efficiency have gotten sort of a lot of the focus up to this point in the state, but there are opportunities on the distribution planning side, especially as buzzwords like resilience continue to be really popular.
Oh, yeah. And in fact, I was just speaking with somebody who mentioned that some innovative ideas coming out of Minnesota talking about how can you do a targeted community issue or investment in energy efficiency that actually can solve some of the challenges on the distribution planning side. So if you see a pocket or a neighborhood that is having particular high demand, instead of having a distribution planning investment, can you use targeted, hyper-targeted, and advanced energy efficiency technologies to kind of meet that need instead?
So one thing that I was kind of curious, and then we can close out. And if you want to punt on this, that's fair.
Uh-oh.
So one of the things that I think it's Minnesota. I think Minnesota Department of Commerce. I think there's some work they're doing up there, or maybe it was before their commission. I believe their utilities up there have a requirement that for certain types of activities, certain types of cases, that they have to have a sort of comprehensive stakeholder engagement mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
Like they have to have a roundtable, or they have to have a working group is the word I've been searching for. They have to have a stakeholder working group.
Yep.
And we don't have that here in any way, shape, or form. I'm curious as to what your thoughts are and how CUB might fit into that kind of landscape if we were to start developing stakeholder working groups, whether it be statewide or just utility by utility.
Yeah, no, I think we want to be a voice at that table. We want, if nobody else wants to convene that table, I think we want to help convene that. There is Focus on Energy is looking to set up some kind of a group, maybe, I don't know if it's going to be a task force, but at least a group of entities that can collaborate and at least discuss steps to take forward. But I think that's important. And I think the second point is that the utilities need to be there's dollars on the line for utilities and all utility customers if the utilities engage more in this. And the reason for that, circling back to the Inflation Reduction Act one more time, is the solar tax credits and in the Inflation Reduction Act for utility scale solar have all these adders in them, and the adders are if you locate it in a community that has a coal-fired power plant, you get an extra bump on your tax credit. If you have a plan that works with local groups, you get an extra bump. There are extra incentives for utilities to do this that can actually benefit all customers, because the more federal dollars we can bring to Wisconsin for a lot of the solar that we need, but that is on the drawing board, the less all ratepayers have to pay for it. So there's a benefit. There are multiple benefits to more engagement.
Cool. So that's a commitment that we're going to stand up. No, we're not committing today to do that. But I think the hope is that someone will, and if not, then we are happy to help with that process.
And there's already one low-income energy advisory group, which is more on the energy assistance side, and that's kind of a group that's kind of formed through the Department of Administration, through their through the folks who implement the LIHEAP and through the WEAP program. But sometimes sometimes everything's a little bit too siloed, and I think we need to have a group, whether that ends up being the focus group or the CUB group or a PSC group, whoever it is, that kind of can step back and think big picture on how all these pieces fit together.
Cool. Well, that's probably enough for today. And we're going to obviously continue. This is going to be. The work will never stop on this. Well, I'm hoping one of these days, mystically, magically, in the future, equity will not be a concern. But that's sort of a utopian future nirvana dream in terms of public policy. But so for the foreseeable future, we will continue to work on this. We'll continue to keep folks updated on things that we are doing, not only in sort of the traditional consumer advocate space, but also equity and affordability and economic justice is tied up in that as well. So cool. Like I said, so maybe if folks, if you've listened to this point, thank you very much. And maybe just one more reminder, June 12th and June 14th listening sessions related to low-income affordability programs in Green Bay and Milwaukee, respectively. Go to cubwi.org/blog for more information. But thank you, Tom. Thank you for the time.
Thank you. Till the next one.
All right.
Like and subscribe.
Like, subscribe, rate, share, please. Share with folks if you found this was interesting or informative or entertaining. Please share. It helps us out quite a bit. But otherwise, we'll catch you on the next one.